welcome to the Developing Your Football podcast. On this episode, we've got a good friend of mine, former colleague, Knape, who's currently out in Moscow working as a PE teacher. I'm sure you're going to enjoy this one. Dave, thank you very, very much for coming on. How are you doing this afternoon?
No problem, mate. I am very well, thank you. Recovering well from COVID.
So I'm guessing by now that most listeners would have made an accurate assumption of where you're from.
You would like to think that it would be pretty obvious, but I've had some people think I was from Australia, but some people think I'm from Scotland, which that I can understand. And then some people think that I don't have an accent, but I did in fact grow up in the mean streets of Northern Ireland.
Yeah, you are one tough bastard, I can vouch for that. So where are you now?
I'm currently in Moscow, Russia, one of the many countries that I've ended up living in so far.
How long have you been back in Moscow?
Ooh, I moved back here August last year, so about 4 or 5 months, not too long.
And you were there before. How long were you in Moscow before?
So originally, the first time I got here, I was actually flown to Latvia to be interviewed by the father of a child that I'd be looking after. Literally spoke to me for about 10 minutes and then left. And I ended up basically being a private tutor of sorts and a tennis coach to one little boy. Fantastic little boy. Was doing that for about 2 years. And then it was like, right, well, it's time to get a real job in a sense. But yeah, so then I moved to Germany for a while, working with children that were like 6 to 8 months, up to a year and a half. And that was tough. As you know, that was whenever I took my first head coaching job. And then, I kind of needed some sort of direction. So I ended up moving back to Russia again after saying I'd never be back. Spent 4 years there, left to do my PGCE, said I'd never come back, and then I'm back again. So I think it's in total, this would be my 7th year in Putinland.
Well, they clearly can't get rid of you, can they? So we first met in the summer of 2016 when we were working for, it was a English teaching summer camps. And we were down in Portsmouth. And we've been mates ever since then. When you came over to do your PGCE in Southampton, unfortunately, we didn't get to hang out as much as we wanted to due to all those restrictions. But we've kept in contact ever since, and I really enjoy following your journey. So it's great to be able to talk to you today and go into that in a lot more detail. First, though, I did not know you were teaching tennis.
Yes, I was coaching a little bit of tennis, just the basics really. How you hold the racket. I focused a lot on footwork, and then the forehand, backhand, and coming up to the net, volleys. That was essentially it. There was nothing, technically complicated with it. It was simple, easy stuff that, your mother and father would do with you if they were tennis enthusiasts. So I wouldn't be too impressed by it, to be honest with you.
I think you've just described my football coaching abilities there. I'm literally one step ahead of the kids.
He did improve remarkably, actually, and was able to score a few points off me in the end. So any sort of progress there, I'll just take it as I was doing something right at least.
Of course, anytime you spend with someone who eventually makes it, you have to be able to put on your CV. We love it when coaches name drop and the least amount of time they spent with someone famous. Usually the more they mention it, it's kind of an inverse correlation. So
it's one way of trying to make themselves stand out from the crowd, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, it does look good on the CV. So if we go back, you have been working abroad and you've been working in international schools. And you did a lot of that before you even got a PGCE. So how did that come about?
Well, we met, with the English language summer camps in Portsmouth. I'd done that for, I think, about 5 years in total, something like that. I'd always been really good with young people. And by young people, I mean from 18, 19 years of age down to the 3, 4, 5, 6 months. I've been working in these summer camps for a while. I'd coached rugby there, and I'd also taught English there. I'd sort of done literally every job there was to be done in these summer camps, and I needed a job, basically. I struggled to find work in the UK. I applied for jobs at the Foreign Office and things like that, but they were saying, oh, you've got to have experience. We need you to be experienced in this. And I'm like, it's an entry-level job and you're looking for 4 years experience on entry-level pay. And if I can't, meet those requirements, you're then saying, go get an internship and work for free. And that would mean relocating, which is just not feasible. So a lot of those things, internships, I was applying for everything. I applied to work at McDonald's. I would have been happy cleaning toilets, to be honest with you, but nobody wanted me. Absolutely nobody wanted me. And it was a case of my best friend Greg had said to me, look, I'm leaving Kazakhstan, because he was basically doing what I did in Moscow in Kazakhstan to begin with. He was like, yeah, they really want someone to take over. So I did an interview with a cousin and stuff, and we got the process started. And but I'd known about these kids, and I knew that one of them was very, very hard work, to put it that way. This kid had basically threatened my best friend with a knife, of all things. So I kind of knew that I was getting into something that would have been certainly very challenging and interesting. But I got a phone call from the agency, and they're like, do you want to work in Moscow? And I was like, yeah, why not? I'd worked in Spain as an au pair previously, and I'd done some NGO internship type work in the Czech Republic, in Prague, and those were my sort of two first sort of experiences of working abroad. And then, yeah, I mean, the rest is history, really. I flew to Latvia, as I said to you, dressed up in a suit, tie, everything. After finally figuring out how to get a taxi outside to the airport, or not the airport, to the hotel. Lovely hotel. Was down in the suit, and this guy looked at me and was like, yeah, very nice, very beautiful. You're a beautiful man. And I'm like, thanks, man, thanks. But I'm not taking numbers today. And he just laughed. Did the interview with the fella, the father, as you know. We talked about rugby. He liked rugby, so that was a good connection to make. Was then basically told, I've got to speak to the boy's mum. Wants to do that, I'll let you know what's going on. But he said, as far as I'm concerned, you've got the job. So, fantastic. First interview I'd been offered after, I think I'd probably applied for 30, 40 different jobs by this point. I'd even worked in citizens advice, getting a bit of work experience that way too. And this was the first big break. And I always knew that once I get to an interview, I'm going to be able to get my personality across, going to see how genuine I am with the things that I say, that it's not a sales pitch for me, and that I genuinely care about the work that I do. And I was at the airport the next day, got a message. Yeah, you got the job. I talked with mum last night, convinced her that that's the way to go. She don't need to be interviewed by her either. And yeah, then that sort of started the ball rolling with Russia. Obviously, with a different job. Went to Germany. In my mind, Germany was a failure. And I'm sure we'll get onto that later. But my parents are like, look, Dave, you need to figure out what you're going to do with your life. We've always been telling you, you'd make a fantastic teacher. And I'd always sort of ignored that and tried to stay away from it because I didn't feel like I had the personality for it. Didn't feel like I had the confidence with it. And and I always sort of stayed away from it. I used to do a lot of writing and interviewing. You know, I interviewed Melanie Leupolz, the Germany international, for women's football. I wrote about women's football, as you know, as well. But again, it was that, and I see Matt Ward talking about these things, experience and stuff too. And I kept getting knocked back. You don't have the experience we need. And it's like, how can I improve my writing to stand out from the crowd? Don't need to improve your writing. There's nothing wrong with it. that's helpful, isn't it? You know, so I emailed and messaged around different schools in Moscow, and the only one that got back to me was the one that many would consider the best in Moscow, and the one that got bought over by the big education company, big company I can't remember. I'm sure it'll come to me later on, but they ended up getting bought. Oh, North Anglia. They ended up getting bought over by North Anglia in the end. And it was there as an assistant teacher. It was there in year one with 5-year-old kids as an assistant. Completely out of my depth to begin with, to be honest with you. But one thing I was really good at was just building a really strong bond with the kids. You know, one kid in particular, Margot, her mum came in. It's like, you know, my daughter really, really likes you. You know, she comes in one day and she just goes, oh, I'll just use my first name for this. Do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have this? Do you have that? And she's talking, yapping about you all night. And I'm like, oh, thanks very much. It's a big compliment, that. You know, and there were parents who said, you know, if everybody was like you with the kids here, you know, we'd be staying at this school. We'd be very, very happy. And, you know, keep in touch with those parents from even back then. There's one family in particular here from Chile. You know, I'd go to their house and I would coach one-on-one football sessions with their son, Seba. And yeah, you know, just I ended up going into PE then after that. And yeah, I was on a treadmill in Florida, and I thought it's time to change this. It's time to take the next step. And I text my boss and said, look, it's time for me to go. And he was like, wow, such a big decision. I said, yeah, just the time's right. We'd had several conversations about this before. And I didn't know where I was going to go, didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew it was the right time to go. And ended up getting on the PGC at Southampton University. Left Russia after another 4 years, 3 of which were in PE. And completing the PGC, and now I'm back as a big dog, as the main man in the classroom, and it's fantastic.
I've got several questions from that. Brilliant stuff. You are senior, clearly have a good relationship with kids, and you're very, very good interacting with them and create a fun atmosphere, but you were reluctant to get involved in teaching to begin with. You weren't so confident that you would be good at it. Why was that?
Well, for a long time, I suffered from like massive lack of confidence in myself. I had no self-esteem anyway. Even though I'd played in various football teams, various rugby teams, cricket teams, the whole lot. You know, I was always one of the more quieter players in the beginning until people got to know me. So I guess in a way I would have considered myself quite an introverted character in that sense. And I just had this overriding sense of anxiety. Anytime I had a thought about having to stand up in front of people and talk to them, you wouldn't think it now. You can't shut me up, but you know, as a teenager, I think I was about 11 or 12 or something, and I couldn't even get on a bus on my own, and that was with my mum taking me down to the bus station, putting me on the bus driver telling me that he would tell me when it was time to get off at the stop I needed to get off at. And the name of the stop, the place that we were going to finish up at, was on the front of the bus. Couldn't do it. And so, like, and I mean, that anxiety and that lack of self-esteem was with me for, I don't know, I didn't really start working on it until I'd gone to Spain. and I'd read Robert Enke's book, and you know, being a goalkeeper myself, there's so much of that anxiety and the same kind of thinking that had gone through his head on the football pitch and stuff. Just, you know, was very, very relatable. And I ended up coming across these like self motivation type videos, you know, whatever people think of them. That's what got the ball rolling for me. And, you know, I worked on my self-esteem and self-confidence and worked on controlling that level of anxiety. And, you know, it got to the point where I actually started to believe that I could do this. You know, it was in my second year in Moscow when I'd moved across to PE. I didn't know what I was doing. And I was in a very bad headspace. Mentally, I was all over the place for a number of different reasons. And I just wasn't getting it. And I remember sitting in my boss's, he was the head of campus. Love the man to bits, a lot of love and respect for him now. The first year and a half, there wasn't a lot of love and respect there between us. And that's, you know, my fault just as much as his. But we had a conversation about PE opportunities further down the line. It's like, yeah, not going to be any more opportunities. I'm not going to offer you a new contract, because the way contracts work there, especially for ATs anyway, was you got a 1 year contract, and then every December you decide whether or not you wanted to stay on, have a discussion with the head of the whole school as well. And I was like, I then went in the staff room, i.e. the workroom, and the fella that I was working with, Martin, who was the PE teacher at the time, and Deanna, one of my colleagues, and they were like, what's wrong? I was virtually nearly in tears, because I was like, I didn't know what I was doing with my life. It was just a big mess. And I'd gone home for Christmas, and just sort of de-stressed, evaluated everything, and came back to Moscow, and things just clicked. I don't know how or why, it just started to click. I was starting to get it with PE. I was starting to improve my warm-ups, how I ran sessions. And I remember Martin turned around to me and he's like, Dave, how are you feeling? I said, yeah, I'm feeling quite good, feeling good. Yeah, I really noticed that, you know, you come back and just things just seem to be working much better. You're improving. And I think then from that point on, my relationship with Martin as well just started to get stronger and stronger as a PE team. And I like to think that in the end, then he was able to trust me on my own with a group. And, you know, several conversations with Justin, my head of campus. And, you know, he, you know, had come and observed me a few times. I'd asked him to come and observe me. I'd asked him for feedback, and I was showing him that sort of proactive nature. You know, you need that proactive sort of approach when it comes to coaching just as much as teaching. And he was impressed by that. He was impressed with everything that I was doing. And yeah, the confidence just keep coming and coming. And then my third year there just went from strength to strength. And then the fourth year was going to be probably the best year. I'd started organizing tournaments, getting some confidence with that. And then, of course, COVID hit. So we were hit with online learning. But by that point, I'd already, you know, developed the self-esteem and confidence through making lots of mistakes, basically, but also just being able to reflect in a more reflective way on my practice as a whole. And of course, with the amazing support that I had from Martin and Justin and other people that I worked with in the school. And it's funny, I thanked Martin for all his patience and all the help and advice that he gave me, you know, during the time there. And he goes, well, thank yourself, because you're the one who did it. Like, and that's just, I mean, I love the man to bits. That's how much of a great and humble guy he is. Wouldn't even accept any sort of praise for the influence, the positive influence that he had on me. And yeah, it's just all of that culminated in me thinking, yeah, I can become a teacher now. Very long-winded answer for you, of course, but you know, there you go.
Yeah, those are the better ones. Oh, yeah, same with coaching. When you ask players, what do you think about the game? Oh, it's good. There's so much value in those details and those self-reflections, and a lot of people will be able to relate to that. Let's talk about Russia and your initial feelings when you got there. What was difficult to adapt to? What kind of things were you not expecting, good and bad?
Well, when I first got here, funnily enough, the reason why the Kazakhstan job was up for grabs was because my best friend had moved to Moscow, and he was the main sort of instigator on sticking Moscow on the map for me. And so I was heavily reliant on him for a while. I mean, I was bricking myself. I got picked up by the boy's mother. Lovely car. My apartment was literally just across the hall from his, which is fantastic. I had this lovely, massive apartment. No proper bed. It was kind of like a sofa type bed thing. The most uncomfortable thing I've ever slept on in my life. But the apartment was huge. It was kind of a bit overwhelming in a sense. Like, you know, I'd never had my own place. So this was fantastic. I could walk around this place butt naked and nobody's going to say a thing. It's brilliant. So I spent a lot of time doing that in the beginning. But like, I mean, I couldn't read the signs. I didn't know what different things meant. I didn't know anything about the language. I didn't know what food was what if you couldn't just look at it and understand. If there wasn't a picture of a chicken on it, I would have known that it was chicken. Put it that way. And I remember, I thought, oh yeah, get these chicken breasts. Took them home. They weren't chicken breasts. I don't know what they were, but they weren't chicken breasts, and they certainly weren't chicken. So I then had to throw those dinner plans out. And you know, the first couple of weeks of working with the boy, Oleg, was very tough. At that point, I think there was a 4-hour difference between the UK and Russia. Russia since like changed the way that their time changes, and it was tough. Like, I was struggling to wake up because I was essentially having to wake up at like, I don't know, 3-4 a.m. in the morning. So that adjustment was really tough. The darkness, oh dear Lord, the darkness here is something else. Like, you get up in the dark, go home in the dark. Basically, that's what I was doing for a long time. He spoke absolutely no English, despite the fact I was told that he had some English. And there was a Ukrainian nanny who was still there. And of course, they have a different way with how they bring up children than we do. My impressions are that they're expected to grow up a lot quicker than what we would expect back home. Yet they legally aren't supposed to be in school until they're 7, which is kind of bizarre. But he was 6 at the time, so he was still at home. I would take him out to the, we had a leisure centre out the back, outside the gated complex. And this is another thing, like, a lot of the complexes, at least the more expensive ones, had security 24/7, like in each of the corpus buildings. So there'd be like 4 different apartment blocks inside this gated area, which also had its own like swimming pool and gym in it as well, and tennis court. That's where I took him for tennis. And I couldn't communicate with anybody. I had to rely on the boy doing the communicating and the nanny. And then it was just tough. Like, I was really quiet. And after the first week, the mum sat me down and was like, yeah, Oleg says you're a bit quiet. it's not really very good. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh crap, I'm going to end up getting sacked here before I've even had a chance to start with him. And you know, yeah, going out was an adventure. I didn't know where I was going. Obviously, with not being able to read the signs, couldn't speak to anybody, was relying on my best friend. It was probably the loneliest experience I've had of moving abroad, because Spain was very lonely as well. I was out in the middle of nowhere, in a place called El Barco de Avila. I was told by the agency at the time that it was not that far from Madrid, which is a complete lie. It was closer to Salamanca and Avila than it was anywhere else. But Russia was just a different kind of loneliness. You had the cold to contend with as well. And I was sitting there at night playing the PlayStation thinking, am I cut out for this? Because we played games with the child and stuff, but and I had a CELTA. So I was qualified to teach English as a foreign language, albeit to adults. I didn't have a printer. I didn't have lots of different resources. I was told by his stepmother that, tell us about these resources, we'll get them and stuff. And then I asked for them and then didn't get them for whatever reason. I can't remember what the reason was. So then it was, there are just so many challenges in that respect, with the loneliness and the feeling of, what's the word? I can't think of the word. Disenfranchisement. I don't know. It was a tough start to a new job in a new country, especially when I didn't really want to go there in the first place. But that's the thing. It's like, do you go on the benefits or do you keep banging your head against a brick wall back home in the UK? And it's like, because you're given that nonsense of, you got to go to university and get a degree and then you get a job. All the adults in your life at that point are telling you how easy it is, because it was easy for them. I remember my father saying to me, oh, I can come up there tomorrow and I'll get a job within a day. And I was, good luck, man. You can't get a job at McDonald's. You're pretty screwed, to be perfectly honest. I didn't want to go to Russia, but it was all part of the process.
So why have you stayed there so long? And why were you saying you weren't going to come back, but then did?
Well, the first time I left, I said I wasn't going to come back. It was just, I'd kind of had enough of that job. I'd gotten to a decent level of English. We were able to communicate. We bonded really well. We had a really, really good sort of, I would say mentor / big brother and little guy kind of relationship. And he didn't want me to go. Originally, it was supposed to be until for 9 months. But he asked his dad if I could stay on. I said, okay, but we'll have to give you a pay cut. And I was thinking, well, I've got nothing else lined up. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I'll stay on longer. So that was extended to Christmas. And then, Oleg wanted me to stay on longer. His mum wanted me to stay on longer too. And that then got extended to the summer. And bless him, I remember his dad had come to Moscow and he's super excited. His dad's come to Moscow. Of course, then I would take him to the restaurant. So we went to the restaurant to see his dad. We were there maybe about 5-10 minutes. His dad gets a phone call and he's got to go to do with work. So I can see in Oleg's face, he's massively disappointed, bless him. But he eats up and then we get back, and then his dad calls later on. I'm going to be late. I'll maybe be over. And I don't know what time he said to him, but it then got to the point where I'm like, he's not coming. And I'm going to have to pick up the pieces here. because I've been in that situation with my parents being separated and being in two different countries, and he so he rang my mobile. I gave it to the wee man, and his face just dropped. His dad's not coming. Tears started in his eyes. He, to be fair to him, he didn't throw my phone on the floor or throw a strop. He just put my phone down gently and ran off to his room crying. And that was the moment when I was like, yeah, I've got to stay on here. The money doesn't matter here. You know, I got to help this wee man and give him that sort of male role models sort of role as best I could at that time. I mean, I was still, I mean, I was maybe, what was it, 25, 26, something like that. So I'm still very immature at that point. I mean, that's one of my sort of keys to success when it comes to being able to relate with younger people, is I'm just a big child myself. And that's where it comes from. But ended up staying there then, and then I thought, he's going to be upset when I leave, so I've got to kind of make this like a normal thing. I've got to like prepare him for it. So I just told him one day, I said, oh, you know, do you know that I'm leaving in, I don't know, say 3 months, for example? And he's like, yeah, I don't want you to go, I want you to stay, sort of thing. And he started crying. I said to him about this question, so I would leave it a few weeks, and then I would say it again to him. Again, the tears would come. And then the final day comes when I'm leaving, and his mum actually gives me a hug. It's the first physical contact between me and his mum. She gives me a hug and she thanks me for everything. And I was shocked because over time we had a very good sort of relationship as well, but that shocked me big time. And then we said, Ollie, you're not going to see Dave again. You're going to say bye. I said, okay, bye. I said, yeah, but you're never going to see him again. And it was like, that's okay. We have Skype. Because I've been telling him anytime he wants me, he can just get on Skype and give me a call. So he was fine with it, bless him. Left, went to Germany, head coach of Irish Munich Rovers. I believe they're the only English-speaking football club in Munich. I don't know about other parts of Bavaria. That kind of came up out of the blue. I had my best friend Greg was living in Munich at the time. And he was like, come to Munich. So I said, okay, I don't have anything else planned. I'm coming to Munich. I found this kindergarten called Con, C-O-C-O-N. Forgive my French type accent there. It's the only way I know how to pronounce the name. Yeah, flew over there. I think it was Easter or something, to see the place. I think I had a bit of I wouldn't say a trial lesson, but I was sort of included in the classroom to see how the kids would react to me and things like that. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun, because all I thought it was you just sit and play with the kids. You know, they're like 8 months to a year and a half. Like what else are you going to do with them, was my sort of blasé attitude at the time. And yeah, had a bit of an interview with the boss, Veronica, lovely woman, lot of love and respect for her and all of her staff as well. And I was offered the job. Now I thought I was going to be paid more than I was, but I was paid the right thing in terms of qualifications and experience, things like that. This is my first time going into this kind of environment. So, you know, you've got to, you know, sort of suck it up in that sense. But I'd gone over to Germany. I had no idea about the economy there, how hard it was to find apartments, how expensive it was, how expensive, you know, living there would be. So there was all sorts of things that had come into why I'd failed in Germany. But I thought I wanted to play football. I had a couple of bad injuries in Moscow beforehand with my ankle, and I wanted to get back into it. So I looked for football clubs in Munich, and found Munich Irish Rovers, and spoke with the director of football, and I was just asking questions about it. It's like, oh, by the way, we're looking for like a head coach, a coach of the first team. Would you be interested? Apparently they've been looking for a while, but nobody wanted to take it on. And I thought, with my naivety, yeah, I've coached kids. I've coached them pretty well. I think I can do this. So I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. Thinking, oh yeah, I'll turn up the training one night. We'll do a bit of passing and shooting, and play a game at the end, and then we'll win games on Sundays. And that was it. That was my sort of first impression with it, because just coaching the kids was so easy. You know, I started coaching goalkeepers first. Saw how dramatically they had improved with that. I thought, no, I'm bloody good at this. This would be easy. Flew over to Munich. Didn't have anywhere to stay. Had put this up in the Facebook group, and I got this Aussie lass who'd been flirting with me in the group before, offering help, which is fantastic. Lovely woman. So I stayed with her, I think, for about 2 weeks, and then I was working in the best friend summer camps. So he runs his own English summer camps business in Germany, going from strength to strength, doing really well for himself. So I worked for him sometimes, and then I was back with her for like half a week, maybe a week or something. And we'd find an apartment in Schwabing. Bad move. My room suffered from the most dreadful mold I've ever encountered in my life. And yeah, so that mold made me very, very sick. I think I got pneumonia on 2 different occasions. I remember cat sitting for 2 weeks with a cat that absolutely hated my ass. It was okay when the owners were there and I was there and I was stroking the cat, no bother. They had left to go off for 2 weeks and I was cat sitting. And the cat was like, the moment I stepped in the door, 1 minute it hated me, next minute it loved me, then it hated me again, but largely it just wanted to scratch my eyeballs out. It was a horrible cat, but I was sick for nearly those whole 2 weeks. So that was impacting on work at the kindergarten. I think there was some miscommunication in terms of my own misunderstanding of what was expected of me. And again, at this point, I didn't really have the self-confidence and anxiety to be singing a children's song to the children when there were other adults there watching. If you've heard me sing, I'm not bad, but you know, it's not something that you want to spend a lot of your time doing. I had a fantastic relationship with the kids. We had a lot of fun. Boss's twin daughters absolutely adored me. I remember she was telling me they were on the way to work and one of them was going, Dave, 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 in the car on the way to work, as if she knew I was going to be working. And then I'd be standing at the top of the stairs and they both come in with the mum. One of them would be in the arms and the other one would be down on the floor walking. And they're like, Dave! They come up the stairs and they'd each take a pinky, one pinky in each hand, and we'd walk off and we'd get breakfast. And the mum would be like, bye then. So that was, you know, one of the highlights. Then there was a young ginger lad, Moritz. He would come in the mornings, bless me, be very, very upset. But he would only come to me. He wouldn't go to anybody else. So I'd be sitting there carrying him around, singing him Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Not too loud, I didn't want anyone else to hear it. But he liked it, settled him down. He's the only child I've gotten to speak with a Northern Irish accent. But ironically enough, it's the word boom. So, you know, he'd just go boom, boom with a Northern Irish accent. And with the jokes that you and I shared together, I'm sure you'd find, you know, there are a few private jokes in there that you will never be able to say publicly that go along with that. But I just wasn't very happy. I was constantly being sick. I'd gone from having everything paid for me and having lots of money to then having to pay for everything myself and having very little money. And that had an impact on my mental health overall. I started to find work boring. I found it to become a chore. I didn't want to go in the mornings. And on top of that, the football coaching, I hadn't realized just how much work like coaching brings with it. And this is one thing that annoys me when people are talking about how bad coaches are on Twitter, the one true place for sensibility. You know, I'd gone in there very naive. First like proper coaching job. I was paid to coach. I thought this was brilliant. I love the idea of it. But in terms of the preparation, preparing for sessions, getting there early, because I didn't have that much money, I could only get the S-Bahn down to a certain train station because they were like in the south of Munich, but I was living like more north. So it was quite a fair distance to travel. But then I would needed to have gotten a bus. Didn't have the money for a bus, so I had to walk, which was another 45 minutes to an hour from the S-Bahn to the training station or the training pitch. We basically rented off another football club who were higher up in the German system. And, you know, I then had to get there before the players to get the equipment out and so on and so forth. And that was a massive challenge, especially when you're not mentally in a good place. I decided, you know, before going in that I'd met them the first night, and you know, I just sort of watched them for a bit. I had no self-confidence going to talk to any of these players at all. I was a bundle of nerves the entire time, and then they asked me to go play with them and asked me to join in. So I joined in, showed them a bit of what I could do, and saw a bit of what they could do. But of course, what you see in the training pitch doesn't always translate as well onto the pitch on the match day. So I thought, yeah, okay, these guys seem like a nice group of guys. That's fine. But I automatically had the assumption that because they've been playing football for years, they knew what they were doing on the pitch. So I was sort of caught between, do I teach them as if I'm teaching the kids, keep it as simple as possible, as basic as possible, and explain it to them in a similar way? Or do I just kind of assume that they know what they're doing and try not to come across as too patronizing? And I kind of got caught in between those two approaches to it, which didn't work at all. I'd chosen a zonal pressing system that Shakhtar Donetsk had used previously. Now, I felt like I'd coached that quite well. And by the time I had left, we had kept a clean sheet, and it seemed to be working in that sense. When you go into a club, and I'm not sure if you have the same philosophy as myself, this is how I approach it now, is that I do work on the defensive shape and formation first, before then I incorporate anything else. Something similar to what Ralph Ragnick's done with United at the moment. He's looked at the defence, seen where the problems are, and then he's tried to change that by making United more compact and changing the formation slightly as well. The one issue with coming into the club as well was that they lost the top goal scorer from the season before. He had gone to another club at a higher level. There were quite a few of the older players who weren't playing anymore. For whatever reason, there was another guy, he had a long-term injury, so he wasn't quite sure about it. Director of football wanted to play, but you know, he had an injury problem as well. And we needed some new players, basically. We were struggling for players. And that wasn't very helpful either, but I'm not too sure if it would have changed much overall. I remember there was a sort of passing and movement drill that I'd seen Southampton use, but I made the mistake of not knowing that drill, the ins and outs of it completely. So when it came to teaching them the drill, because I didn't know fully what it was going to be like, they struggled to pick it up originally. But then because another player had done something similar before, he was then able to translate that for me, which was fine. But that crushed me that night. I've messed this up here. This is just completely embarrassing. I worked with the goalkeepers. That was the easiest part. Whenever I worked with the goalkeepers, I felt at ease. There was no anxiety. I knew exactly what I was doing. I had Tommy Wright as my goalkeeping coach for a short period of time, couple of months. I'd had another coach when I was playing with Nortel, who was a proper qualified goalkeeper coach, something I never had as a youngster growing up in Northern Ireland. I'd had county trials and that sort of thing, not as a goalkeeper, but as like a centre back and stuff like that. I was never going to be one of these players who was going to be playing for Northern Ireland or playing across the world. No, that was never going to be the case. But at that time, with the positions I was playing, I was deemed worthy of someone to have a look at, basically. But at Nortel, it just sort of happened by chance that I got picked up there, had a proper goalkeeping coach, and it was just fantastic. And I was able to incorporate everything I'd learned from him and from Tommy Wright, and I was able to then bring that to the goalkeepers at this club, and they really enjoyed that training. It was fantastic. What we ended up doing was we sort of split the session into two. So one of the more senior players would help. So I think Niels helped with the defence, and they kept on practicing that zonal pressing defensive structure that I'd had in place. The goalkeepers essentially sort of joined in to some extent. They were kind of neglected at times, but that's mainly because of a lack of personnel. And then I would work with the other group. So one thing I had done, you know this story already. I'm a big fan of the NFL. Now, Munich would have been, 2015, 2016, something like that. And I'd come up with the idea of having some set piece plays. Now, in the real game situations, we didn't actually use them. I'll get to why now. I was out at the side. I had the four lads lined up, one behind each other, and someone pretending to be the goalkeeper and a couple of defenders. And we all had our signals like A, B, C, D, for example, or 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, number one, you to go to the front post, number two to the back post, one goes to the middle of the goal, and then number four would have come short to me. And then it would have basically each call would have had a different name. Each play had a different name, and I would cross the ball in a different way each time. This was a way of, because I recognized, and rightly so, that from our set pieces, our corners, our free kicks, there was no movement whatsoever inside the box. Of course, if there's no movement, you're not going to pull players out of position. You're not going to be able to create then space for other people to attack the ball. And I remember, I think I remember his name is Ali. Okay-ish player, not a player that I would have had in my first 11. And he sat me and he was like, why are we doing this? There was a couple of expletives in there too. And of course, at that time, because I didn't have self-confidence or any real self-esteem, and it was still kind of, I wanted the players to like me, basically, at that point. This was still very early on. And then by that point, I was just like, do you know what? What's the point then? I'll not do it. But I look back on it now, I was 100% right to have drawn all this up. I was 100% right to use it. And lo and behold, who does it at a World Cup on the biggest stage with England? Gareth Southgate in the World Cup in Russia. And I sat there and I was like, what? I wish I could have this fella in front of me right now so I can just tell him, I told you so. Like, that there was value in what I was bringing in with that training session, because he was questioning that value. A guy who couldn't get in the first team. And at that point, if that was me now, if I was back at that club there now, I would turn around to him and say, look, if you don't want to be here, you don't want to learn new things, go home. But at that point, because of where I was in my life psychologically, you know, I wasn't in the right space to be able to sort that out. Other issues that I had with Oktoberfest. Now, I was surprised. Oktoberfest doesn't start in October. It starts towards the end of September. And this affected attendance for games. People wanted to be at Oktoberfest. They didn't want to play football. Now, in this league, if you forfeit 3 games, that's you done for the season. Couldn't get enough players for 1 game. We forfeit it. Because we didn't, I don't believe we had enough players for the first team and the second team. The first and second team generally played on the same day. Sometimes they would play at the same venue. I think sometimes it would have been different venues. And then I think there was another occasion when I ended up deciding, you know what, there's not enough players putting their hand up. There's no point in putting out the second team players there. These guys can't play 2 games in a row. And forfeited that too. I put the message out there, look, you have got to turn up here. We were struggling for players. I, in the end, ended up having to register as a player, which I didn't want to do. Myself and the director of football spoke about this at the start of the season. Manager does not play. But I ended up having to register myself. So we had that extra player if we had to. I did play a few games. But I'll get to that in a bit. And there were players telling me that they were a striker. They couldn't finish the dinner. In training, they looked fantastic. Good striker of the ball. He can finish. But when push came to shove on the pitch on a Sunday, and I'm not exaggerating here when I say this, I would have finished that. I would have put those chances away. Not an issue. I have no issue with saying that. Lovely guys. Don't have anything negative to say about the guys in that sense. But one thing coaches need to be aware of is that when you come into a club, you know nothing about the players. You're going to get players chance their arm and tell you, "Oh, I play in this position. I play in that position." Or on the opposite end, there's a French lad, lovely guy. Have a lot of time for him. I've spoken to him recently as well. I was playing him right midfield on the right. Just thought with his qualities and stuff, he'd be very good there. But his natural position was right back. And when he ended up going into right back, he excelled. And I was like, why didn't you tell me that you were right back? I would have moved you there and tried you there earlier. You know, so there are little things like that. You know, there were things like having to talk to the players about, I didn't do this too much, to be honest, about why they were being dropped or why they weren't playing in the first team or whatever. But I'd taken the approach of, well, somebody's doing well in the seconds, I'm bringing them up, I'm giving them a chance. Because I hadn't thought much of some of the performances of some of the players who were in the first team originally. There was a guy called Andy, tall guy, bit hipster looking, lovely guy. But people were questioning me as to why he was playing in the first team. And they couldn't see why he was there. He had the height and he had played well. He had the effort, the heart, the work rate. He played well. There's another guy, John, Irish fella. I love that guy to bits. He backed me to the hilt. 45, he was still playing at 45 and he was putting in a shift. He was my captain. He was leading that team from the front. And there were some people that you probably could question their effort and stuff, but you know, I took that down to me. There was one game in particular, and there's a guy called Adam Smudger, they called him. I thought he was a great guy. We haven't talked since I left, basically, but he looked technically very good on the ball, looked a good player. Towards the older side of it. But there was one game he was saying that we don't know what we're doing. And that was when I realized I've been coaching this not wrong. I needed to have been walking these guys through different game scenarios and tell them where their positioning should be. Because we were getting overrun in the middle of midfield. And that was with 2 defensive midfielders. who were supposed to be compact. But what was happening was Adam was then coming out on to the left. He was left-footed player, so I played him on the left. He was coming out to the left, but then the guy on the right-hand side was way over to the right. So he wasn't in the right position, whereas Adam was in the right position of where I wanted him to be. So there were things like that that I really should have gone through in more detail. I also had my goalkeeper get absolutely paralytically drunk the night before a game. Now, he had a lot of problems off the pitch, and we've actually ended up becoming really, really good friends at the back of Munich. I've seen him a few times. You know, I did my very best to sort of help him through a situation that I had no experience of. But I banned him for 3 games. I said, right, your apologies accepted. But we were playing the team that was bottom of the league. We needed a goalkeeper that day. And if we had a goalkeeper, we would have won that game. Again, our problem was scoring goals, but I needed to shore up the defence. Because so many games, it was 0-0 or 1-1 or whatever. And then boom, they scored 2-3 goals in the space of 5 minutes. That was how we conceded our goals in clusters inside a 2 to 5 minute period. And then we'd go up the other and hit the post or we'd hit the bar. But I banned him for 3 games. By this point, I was registered, so I was able to play. We ended up getting another goalkeeper later on down the line. But the goalkeepers at the club weren't 11-a-side goalkeepers. Like, that was an issue as well. They didn't know how to command the box. So they could stop shots, but in terms of commanding the box, taking crosses, clearing outside of the box, that sort of thing, that wasn't really in their makeup. So something similar to the way Robert Enke was. He was a shot stopper. He wasn't someone who dominated the box and played out from his feet and stuff like that. So I didn't want to try and change that in them, just focused on their strengths. And they did a good job in general. So that was another tricky situation that we had to get through. And then, I mean, at the start, when I first came in, I said, look, I've been told about the atmosphere at the club, that there's too much bitching at each other and stuff like that. So we had a couple of friendlies, and I had set the stall out from the start, and I took a fella off for what he had said to another player. I won't say go as far as to say I regret that decision, but I think I should have given him a second chance at that point, because I feel like there and then I just lost him. That was it. I felt like I lost him after that. And he was one of the better players. For a while, he said he couldn't play, but for a while, I think he just didn't want to play. Maybe I've remembered that differently, but I just felt like I'd lost him at that point. And then when my goalkeeper, who had banned for 3 games, he'd come back, he was ripping into some people. And I was like, right, get off. And then he was having to go at me. It's like, right, get off now. Now, bear in mind, we're trying to stay in the division here. But I was willing to take him off to try and be consistent. I should have taken him off at that point, and I should have left the other guy on in the friendly game earlier in the season, because I don't feel like the players had looked at that as if I had been consistent. And he apologised to me in the dressing room. He apologised to everybody else. That's fine. But I should have still taken him off. There were some conversations at halftime when I wouldn't say I had a go at the players, but I just felt like they were letting themselves down. I wasn't too fussed about myself. I felt like they were letting themselves down. Maybe that's a combination of me playing them in the wrong position. Maybe it's, I didn't give them enough instruction as to what they had to do. I'd given a guy an opportunity to play in the first team. A lot of people were like, he's not good enough, but everybody deserves a chance to show me what they do. And he did well for a period of time, and then he started arguing with me on the pitch, and that was that. And I never picked him for the first team again, and he never spoke to me again. But that's part of coaching, and there were just lots of things like that. I took every defeat personally. When I ended up having to play, I lost sight of the game. I lost sight of adjustments that I needed to make, because I was focused on trying to do my best for the team as a player. And yeah, all those things outside of the coaching role. And then I think the last game that I coached, because I decided to leave Germany, left the job and everything, was a 0-0 draw, and I was in goal. They had a few shots on goal that I had to save that were really good, but you know, that was the one game where I felt this is starting to click here. You know, the lads, to be fair, they tried to help me get another job in Munich, teaching English as a foreign language. They tried to, I think it was Jordan, who asked me about the German skills, because he does a lot of media work there. You know, he tried to help get me to stay. But I mean, the German's nowhere near good enough to be writing in German about Bayern Munich, for example. So that was a no-go. I ended up telling my parents that it ended slightly differently, because I was kind of ashamed that I had failed. Because my best friend had told me, I don't think you're going to enjoy this job. I think the kids are too young for you. So there was a lot of shame behind, well, from my own point of view, for the failures of Germany. I really wanted to do a much better job. I still keep an eye on the club. You know, that Chris, you know, they do a lot of good work in the community. They're a fantastic club. They're very welcoming and open to like the refugees that moved over to Germany. You know, they helped integrate them. And if anybody's ever in Munich looking for a football club, definitely look them up, give them a go. It's a very well-run club. You know, I had the director of football say to me that he learned a lot from me. And I remember giving them some speech about how Sir Alex talks about having control. And I look back on it now and I cringe. Because yes, I had elements of control on certain things, but you know, it was just, yeah, I see that first coaching job for me as a complete failure, in that sense. But it ultimately forced me to consider going into teaching, and that's how I ended up having I had a very open and honest discussion with my mother at the time, and she marched me down to Citizens Advice, and I applied for like a volunteer type role there. And she's like, "You're going to do this until you go to Russia," because I had an interview. I'd ended up having to fly to London for the interview. My shirt had a black blotch of ink up over here on the shirt. My jacket was too small for my arms, so the jacket would have been like that on the arms, with like my shirt hanging out of it. Shoes were too small, trousers were too big, didn't have a belt. I looked an absolute mess. And I walked into that hotel. It was for the International School of Moscow. And the heads of campuses are there. The head of the school's there. And then we have to do a demo, like a small demo lesson. And I'm like, crap, I have no idea what I'm doing here. Because the interview part was after, and this was all part of the group. And I thought, right, I'm just going to have to wing this. So it came round to me. I just got up and I started saying hello to people in different ways. Like, yo, 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 what's up, brother? Like doing all these different types of handshakes and hugs and all that sort of stuff. And they loved it. And then I was paired with someone and we sort of, you know, I blagged it in a sense. And I ended up getting off at the job. I had a conversation with Justin, excuse me, he was my head of campus. And we had a discussion about why I wanted to be there, like if you were offered the job, like how long would it take you to decide? What would you say? I said to him on the spot, I said, if you'd offer me the job, I'd take it straight away. I have absolutely no doubts about it. And I remember giving him the saying, I remember Will Smith had said this, he said, if you're not making someone else's life better, then you're wasting your time. And that was one of the lines I had said to Justin in the interview. But he sent me an email. I think it was either later that day or the next day, saying like how he really enjoyed, the interview, getting to know me, and he was very impressed. And by that point, I kind of thought, yeah, I'm getting this job here. And that was that. That's how I ended up coming back to Moscow. Just exactly as it should have been and was meant to be. I think if I had stayed in Munich longer, I don't think my life would have been going anywhere. And yeah, 4 years in Moscow.
I have to get a move on shortly. Big game coming up tomorrow. I'd like to ask you a few quick fire questions because I could.
No problem.
All day, but I've got a checklist of things I need to do, and one of them is fill up the car. Like, out of all the places you've worked, forgetting the job, but location, which one's been the best location and why?
Out of all the jobs in all the countries, that's a tough one. Because right now I live 20 minutes walk away from where I work. And I'm still enough into the city, which is fantastic. But I'm going to say Munich. I'm going to stick with Germany because every time I get off the plane, I just feel like I'm at home. I was born in Germany, you see. I was born in Berlin. That's why I mentioned earlier that I grew up in Northern Ireland. Germany just feels home. Moscow is great for a variety of reasons, but I'm going to go with Germany.
Okay. So your PGCE was a primary PGCE, not PE specific, right?
Yes, correct. It was a primary education PGCE. We were trained to teach PE. And we were given some really good ideas. I don't think I saw any primary PE, PGCE standalone courses. I don't feel it's valued enough in the UK. You look at what PE teachers are paid in primary school in the UK, you're looking at what, 12, 13, 14 grand a year for what is, in my opinion, arguably one of the most important subjects in the curriculum. If you look at everything that PE brings from a social development standpoint. But this gives me the opportunity, because right now I am teaching PE as well as teaching in the classroom. It's a double-edged sword. I've got the best of both worlds.
Something I've always found with PE, complained about this a lot the last few years, is the amount of emphasis that is put on PE as a subject that isn't put on others. But then paradoxically, it's not valued. So you say, well, what's the point in maths where you get good in numbers? What's the point in history? You learn about things that happen. What's the point in PE and sport? Oh, it's great for social skills, psychology. It's good for fitness. It's teach you how to work as part of a team. You learn about nutrition. You learn about how the body works. You learn how to play a whole range of sports. You learn how to keep fit for life. It's important fundamental.
Problem solving is another one.
Yeah. I'm going, well, hold on. If it's all this, why do you cut funding for it? If it's this magic pill that can make you good at all of these things, why do kids do it so infrequently? Why is it so half-assed when teachers have to do it? Why is it looked down upon by parents? Why is it usually one of the least funded parts of the school? And I think it does all that, but you only pay the teacher the same as you pay all the other teachers, despite expecting that much from them. And I think it's just it's a mess. So we need to clearly outline what's the point in PE. Maybe it's to sample different sports. Maybe it's to get good at different sports. Maybe it's to improve your fitness. But I think there's such a blanket approach where they think that PE does everything. But I also think that that a lot of schools, a lot of parents or teachers believe that PE does this without having to put the effort in, and it teaches discipline. Well, it does to an extent if you prioritize discipline within sessions. If a kid has got bad behavior, putting them in a PE session is not going to improve their behavior, and it's actually going to disrupt everybody else's. I mean, and why is it we think we don't apply that same standard to maths, for example? You know, kids ill discipline, they need to do some maths, they need to learn how to follow orders, but we think that about PE. So I've gone off on one, as I typically do.
I agree with you. I mean, some of the PE stores that I've seen in the UK have been an absolute disgrace in terms of the equipment they have available. It's dirty, it's old, it's broken.
Teach basketball.
They don't have enough of it. And I mean, you're right in the sense that, you know, it teaches discipline, but there needs to be a focus on that. But a child will be disciplined even if they have bad behavior, if the subject or task they're working on is of interest to them. I think that's the big thing there. Certainly from what I've seen and what I've done, I've made children my assistant in PE if they hurt their arm or something like that. You know, lots of different things that people can do. I mean, even working at the international schools, the school I've got now has got a very good PE hall. The school I worked for before, the PE hall was an absolute joke. Wouldn't have met I better not say that, but it wasn't fit for purpose in my opinion. But international schools are restricted by the space that they have to use. And in cities, there's not always enough space to be able to do that. And that's a big problem. People talk a good game when it comes to PE. Yeah, it's very important, blah, blah, blah. But from my experience, if the children have a show, like they've got a play to put on for the parents, and they need to use the hall, but there's a PE lesson, that PE lesson ain't happening. You've got to go outside if the weather's good. If the weather's bad outside, you're in the classroom, you're teaching chess. You're not teaching ball skills or anything like that. You know, so it plays second fiddle in that sense. And it's like, I remember some children needed to catch up on stuff during my PGCE, because the Board of Governors were like, well, these children are behind. Why are they behind? Right, then there needs to be more interventions. So what was the first thing that they got left out of for a portion of the lesson? It was PE. The one thing that they really loved and really enjoyed and wanted to be a part of was being taken away from them. How do you think that makes a child feel? You know, and it's, you know, I had this discussion during the PGC. We were in the university and I said that, you know, taking the one thing away from the child that the child enjoys in school is not going to improve their maths or their science or their English, because they'll sit in doing that intervention. Their mind will not be in it. They'll not be interested. They'll be thinking, this damn teacher's taking me out of PE or taking me away from a lesson I enjoy, so I could do this. I don't care about this. Yeah. You know, when I first came to that school, the first school, my focus was on the social development. They were focusing on academics alone, purely. It's academics. That's what the importance was. And this is the problem with the education system. It's maths, English, science, and then you have to add the other stuff. Forgetting about taking the skills that the children have. And this is where the discussion came about. I said, if the child is really, really good at music, we want to make them even better. We want to make them so damn good that they'll be on the BBC playing in front of 20, 30, 40,000 people. We shouldn't be taking them away from that to improve in other subjects. I think that approach needs to change in education to a point, but then the accountability aspect of it comes in. Ofsted comes in. Ofsted have been a nightmare for teachers in schools during this pandemic. Oh, you're performing below standard, below an acceptable standard. That school has had like 5 teachers between all of the kids that are in, because all the others are off of COVID and stuff like that. So it's, you know, the Minister of Education didn't know what he was doing during the pandemic. And there are a lot of higher ups in education who think education should be the same as it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. Or, all this extra pressure should be put on teachers. A majority of them are vastly underpaid for the extra hours and the work they actually do.
Oh yeah.
So, it's a massive problem within the education system in general.
It's always just seemed like brainless logic. So you got a math class and a kid is fidgeting because they're full of energy. All right, we'll take away your PE as a punishment. Well, now the kids will be even more fidgety because they don't have a release of their energy. Same thing with break times, how they ban anything that will constitute as rough play. So a lot of schools don't even let you have ball games, not even plastic or sponge balls at break time. So the kids are just kind of stood around kind of like, what the hell do we do? And then we have a go at the kids and say, well, they're not as creative or as independent as they were 20 years ago. Well, no wonder, because you prevented them from having any kind of space or structure where they can play. You banned them from doing this, that, and the other, and then you shove devices in their faces when they're at home. So when do they ever learn that? And I've made this point several times, how in the 90s, I think if you were in a park and you chucked out some bibs and cones and left the kids unattended, they would make a pitch and play a game. Nowadays, if you left kids unattended in the park with some bibs and cones, they would still just be stood there, hands in pockets, shrugging, going, what do we do? And we've kind of crippled them in that sense, and there's too much like counting of stuff which really does not matter. We know that development is not non-linear, particularly in a sporting sense. It is very, very subjective. It's very, very hard to actually define. You take something as broad as football, you look at the vast range of body types and personalities that can succeed in sports, and already at 7, 8 years old, we're counting stuff like, oh, which kid is the fastest? We're going to give this kid a gold medal. We're going to take them off the county and make them run, and it goes against everything that we know about engaging sport. If our goal is to prolong their participation in being physical, being active, I mean, the amount of people that I see as adults who hated PE at school because it was done wrong, they're unfit, and they try and go to the gym every January, and they're in their 30s and 40s, and that they have no desire to be physically active, and so they're not as healthy as they could be, because at some point in their life, someone had turned them off of PE for whatever reason, whatever or whatever way they viewed PE. They taught it incorrectly to kids. They didn't include them, or as we often see, a lot of schools, as much as I liked it, they only do football or cricket. Like football for 2 terms, cricket for the summer, or athletics, and that's it. And kids are pretty good at comparing, and they all know after just a little while who's good and who's bad. And particularly because of the emphasis we put on the success and the failure of kids in these games and these activities, they will start to feel bad. They won't want to participate in something they know they're not good at, and they won't want to be part of a group where they know there's a hierarchy and they're at the bottom. And so they then start to loathe PE, and they come up with all sorts of excuses to not participate. You get people that will not ever join in because they've had negative early experiences with sport and physical activity. And I think a lot of that comes down to how schools view the PE sessions now. I'll get off my pedestal and I'll let you add your thoughts on that just to round up.
Well, there's a lot of things in play here, and I think as a society we've gotten soft. For example, at the school I'm at now, and this is it comes into child protection in a sense, because the types of balls that the kids are allowed to use at lunch and break times are designed to not hurt. So what you're essentially doing there with the child is wrapping them up in cotton wool. So when then they do experience something whereby an actual football on a Sunday hits him in the face, it's going to be a massive shock. And then, of course, there's this massive fuss. Oh my days, Johnny's got hit in the face with a ball. It's all right, it's just a ball. Let's not go down the route of hitting at that age, because that's a different ball game entirely. But things like that, and then participation medals. This is a big pet peeve of mine. Oh, you finished sixth. Oh, well done. Here's a medal. No. Children have got to learn that they're going to fail in life. They're going to be successful in life. And, this is one of the important lessons that we're not teaching them. Every child has to get a certificate for everything, but they have to get a medal for everything. But then where does their competitive drive come from then? Where does that idea of, I didn't get it today, but next time I'm gonna have a bit more practice in the garden. I'm going to think about a little bit more about what I'm going to do, or maybe I just didn't work hard enough. I'm going to work harder, and I'm going to, give them something to aspire to. You can give children confidence.
So those are things that takes work and perseverance, and those are things that we are not cultivating anymore. And you give me flashbacks here to we'd be playing, basic games in the playground in PE sessions, and there would be kids having tantrums if someone didn't pass on the ball or if their team lost, and there'd be arguments that would go on for days about someone cheating or about it being in or not being a point. You've not experienced failure before, have you? Because you're too old to be reacting in this way. And I think a lot of it is because they've been conditioned to value, reputation over character.
Instant success as well.
Yeah, I want to be seen as a winner without necessarily having to put in the effort to actually win. And because you've now beaten me, that is an affront to my self-efficacy. And I do not have the emotional maturity to be able to handle this. So I'm going to freak out, have a big tantrum, and then teacher or teaching assistant or someone else going to come up to the PE teacher next week and say, could you make sure that when this kid plays that they don't lose? Or could you make sure that you don't keep score too loudly, or give them lots of positive reinforcement and lots of points, special bonus points for doing things. Now we're just enabling, aren't we? Like, it's okay to be upset that you didn't do very well, but you can't change the reality around it. The game is over. Like, feel bad and get over it, and then try harder next time. But we've taken that away from the kids, and they're not allowed to experience any negative emotions anymore. And like you said with the balls, I definitely see a lower pain threshold, because we'd get kids who'd have a plastic ball would hit them, and they would be in fits of tears. I go, wow, does that hurt? Yes, it does. Well, good thing it's only a plastic ball and not a real ball, because then it would really hurt, wouldn't it? Like, it's the balls.
I've been hitting the face with a cricket ball.
Yeah.
I've been hitting the chest with a cricket ball, and people are like, "Oh my days, are you all right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, it's just a ball."
Yeah,
right. But I think
by not letting them have this, by not letting them have this experience, by only using those kind of plastic shoot balls that you get from the beach on holiday, they don't ever experience the impact of being hit by a real ball. And because I've definitely noticed a lack of like coordination and perception skills. Kids aren't being taken to the park anymore by parents and by older siblings. And so nowadays, if you're picking teams or whatever, and you say, here, catch, and you throw a bib or a cone or a ball to a kid, it will actually hit them, because they couldn't see it coming. They wouldn't know what to do with it. And of course, every generation is guilty of looking back through rose-tinted glasses and saying, back in my day. But I'm trying to be entirely objective here and look at some of the things that I have seen happen in many different cultures and many different countries, where I definitely see kids that can't take ownership in the way they used to. I definitely see kids that struggle to invent games, that struggle to play well with others, that struggle wins and losses. I remember as a kid, if a child lost a game in the playground and had a tantrum, you'd laugh at them for weeks. You see him get upset and cry. Now that's bullying, and I think it's also I'm going way off subject here, but nowadays I see a lot of this. If a kid fell over in PE, so let's say they went to kick a ball and did an air kick and fell over, the typical reaction is just to laugh because it's funny, because slapstick humor appeals to people on a very basic level, particularly kids. Laughing at someone making a mistake isn't bullying. Bullying is targeted, relentless, and designed and exhibited specifically to cause pain, harm, humiliation to the individual on the receiving end. Someone missing an open goal and laughing at them, that's not bullying. But because kids can't experience negative emotions anymore, anything negative like that has now been conflated with bullying. Like I remember any kid who shafted their pass out for a throw-in would get called a donkey. You just accept it. Haha, donkey. It's not an attack on you as a person. It's actually, if anything, softening you up to understand, yeah, it's a mistake and we all make mistakes, and move on with life. And paradoxically, making them tougher because of it. And now, because we've removed that, the snowplow, was it you prepare the road for the kid rather than preparing the kid for the road? Because we're doing that, I'm seeing all these issues are now being added to PE teaching that weren't there previously. And I realize I've talked far longer than I should have. I realize
that's right. I'll finish up, sure, with the last couple of points. And I agree with you to an extent with the laughing and stuff in PE. The one thing that I never let the children do is, if someone falls over and hurts themselves, I don't allow them to laugh at that point. But I also,
so if it was,
in terms of missing a goal and stuff,
if you slipped up and missed an open goal, I'd laugh at you. But that doesn't mean that we're not friends and that I want you to fail. And it doesn't mean that I now think you're a bad person. I'm not talking about getting the whole class to stop and look and do a Nelson Muntz at that one kid. I'm talking between friends, kids that are always together, kids that hang out and go to each other's houses and play on football teams with each other.
Oh yeah, that's
they're now not allowed to laugh at each other or make silly comments anymore.
It's an interesting one. I think one sort of thing that I've seen is that children who have a lot more screen time, who play a lot of games, they want to be able to do something instantly. Like, they need that instant gratification, they need that instant success. But there are very few things in life where you're going to be instantly successful at. And that then brings a much bigger problem, whereby they encounter a problem, and because they can't do it straight away, or they're not successful quick enough, they can't get past that problem. And that then goes on later on in life. If you've got financial problems or relationship problems, you can't get into that mode of thinking of problem solving and trying to think outside the box to solve that. It's just a case of, right, no, it's not working anymore, bye. And that comes into our relationships and things too. It's like, we had a fantastic relationship for 3 months. Now it's got a bit boring and nothing's really happening. So I'm just, bye. Stuff like that. These things have a very dramatic effect further down the line as well. And it all comes down to the PE in the education system. And, children will not make a big fuss of things unless you make a big fuss of it. I remember a child, it was at home time, I was outside, and I saw this child come outside up the steps, and she had blood on her mouth. She had hurt herself. Was it blood on her mouth or blood? She had cut herself anyway. I went over, saw you all right there? She was crying, so picked her up, gave her a hug, and I didn't say anything else. I went to bring her the nurse. The mum saw, came rushing over hysterically. Now, the child had gone from just having like a little tear in her eye to then being absolutely hysterical as well, because the mother thought that it was a much bigger problem and bigger deal than it should have been. And I think that comes into the sports as well. Well, he's been dropped or hurt himself or whatever. And PE, well, you know it yourself, PE originally came from PT, personal training in the army and all that sort of thing. And that was focused on drills and physical things to get your strength up and all that sort of stuff. So it wasn't very fun for quite some time. Then obviously they added games and stuff and the curriculum changed. But the problem with the curriculum when we were growing up was that it all catered to boys. There was no dance or aerobics or anything that would have interested women, girls. Now, especially amongst the PE teachers who are men, dance doesn't really get a look. Oh, we got dance. Or do we really need to do it? Let's do something else. You know, so there's still those issues in there as well. And there are still PE teachers and there are still coaches who think girls shouldn't be doing sport or can't play football or can't play rugby. The amount of stories that I've heard, the amount of infuriating stories I've heard that a girl's wanted to play football and her PE teacher or coach has said no because she's a girl. It's ridiculous. The curriculum has changed slightly, but still got a long way to go. And then we still have that stereotype of, oh, well, men can't dance. Why can't men dance? Some of the best ballet dancers are men. Some of the best ice skaters who dance on ice are men. You know, I see maybe it's more of a Russian thing than I've experienced here, but because the gender roles are still quite prominent. I'm a boy, I don't want to do dance. I don't want to do dance. I changed that with this dance session this year. I had the boys dancing at the front of me so they couldn't mess around. The girls dancing at the back. And the boys loved it because I did it in such a way that it was engaging, that they weren't thinking, oh, I'm just doing dance and shaking my butt like a girl. You know, so there's just so many things, like misconceptions and you know, stereotypes and things like that just come into play for, you know, generational reasons, you know, policy reasons, financial reasons. It's just, it's a shit show, to be honest with you. I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. I'll be honest with you, unless there's a specific focus on it. The UK is one of the fattest countries in the world. You know, I could go into Deliveroo and order a McDonald's or a Burger King for like a $5 or a $10. But if I went on to something that was like a vegan one or like one of those more healthy shops, it's like double the price. That comes down from government policy and how food's treated. You know, they took the sugar tax in. So what did the companies do? They put artificial sweeteners in. What's just as bad for the body as sugar? Artificial sweeteners, if not worse, because that is a synthetic material. It's not a natural thing. Like, yes, sugar is bad, but then it comes down to personal responsibility. It comes down to being taught in PE about nutrition. But then again, in primary PE, you're not really taught how to teach kids about nutrition, because that comes in under a different subject, like PSHE or something like that. So it's
stuff they'll figure out later.
System needs reform. We could be here all day about that stuff.
Yeah. So you've reminded me when you said dance. I cannot dance to save my life, and I rarely even try. And my first dance at the wedding, I simply just held my wife and kind of waddled a bit, and then gestured for everyone else to join in. After about 30 seconds, I found it so embarrassing. And when I was younger, I had a couple of girlfriends that were dancers and went to see them perform in shows. Having never been exposed to things, it's not a manly thing to do, is it? And particularly at my private school, we would look down upon dance, especially for a man doing it. And so I went to see these shows. It's about 20 young women and about 2 or 3 young men. And in one or two of those men would be gay. And I was looking at as a teenager going, I think they've figured something out here, these guys. They are, the odds is definitely in their favor. They've done well here. And it of course, very immature viewpoint, but it starts to get me thinking about, particularly in PE and in school, even now, in this day and age, a lot of this stuff, the prejudices and the expectations are still there, even if it's subtle, even if it's quiet. It's almost like it's in the walls of the school. Like, still too many girls that say football's for boys, too many boys that say dance is for girls. It's not yet gone away completely, and that, I believe, is another part of it, because I would struggle to get girls engaged in sport at the age of like 6 years old, because they'd already had their brains washed to believe that they were inferior, or the opportunities were not for them, or that it was for boys. And a girl that also, sport is not for boys, it's for everyone. But also, if you're a girl that plays sport, you're manly, and that's bad. That had been ingrained in some of these girls as young as 6 years old, and it's only going to get worse from that point on. And I don't know how we undo that damage in kids that are that young and that fragile and that delicate and that susceptible to these prejudiced and completely wrong views.
I've encountered that here. The best way when it comes to a dance session, dance part of the curriculum with the kids, I just get up and make a fool of myself and dance. Like, I've taken dance classes, I can dance a little bit, but like, they're sitting laughing at me. I'm like, look, if you find it funny, you can laugh at me, it's not a problem, I'm not going to be offended. I just get up there and I dance. And then the girls start dancing, and then some of the boys who aren't quite sure start dancing. I did dance club at my current school on a Thursday. I'm not teaching specific dances, but we'll look at different dances on YouTube, they'll give it a go and stuff like that. And I had one boy at the start, and I think I've got about 3 or 4 now. When I was at ISM with the football side of things, I had a Champions League competition at lunchtimes, and I encouraged the girls to get into it. But the one thing that stopped the girls originally was that, oh, the boys making fun of us, or the boys kick us and stuff like that. So what I did, I had the girls' football on a Friday at break time. No, boys, go away. No, give me that ball. That's ours. Only the girls were allowed to play football. And from that, then some of the girls actually, if I remember correctly, joined us for the tournaments on a Sunday. They were joining in with the boys during break times and stuff like that. And it's, you know, they see that, oh, these Champions League winners are getting medals, all that sort of stuff. You know, I made it the girls' own group. If they had enough teams, they would have got a medal as well. And I contacted the Russian Football Association. This was the year of the World Cup, and I had two of the Russian two Russian professional footballers, Nastya and Lisa. They came along, introduced the girls and stuff. Lisa's a fantastic goalkeeper. She showed us a bit of what she could do at the family fun day, and Nastya was doing some keepy ups and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it can happen, but you've got to make a bit of an arse out of yourself, and you've just got to be persistent with it. You've got to. I mean, I would show videos of female footballers like Melanie Leopold's. You've got, isn't it Jennifer Beresford or something? I can't remember her name, but the England goalkeeper. So many names, I can't remember all of them. You know, you've got the Dutch lass. I should remember her name because she's my favorite football player. Huh?
The Arsenal striker.
No, not the Arsenal striker, Medina. It's she plays for Manchester United. She's a I think, defensive midfielder. Let
Is
me
it Jill
see.
Roord?
I'm just going to quickly Google this. Huh?
Is it Jill Roord?
It is not. If you said the name, I would remember it. I'll get it in a second. Jackie Groening.
Okay.
Jackie Groening. She was. She's a fantastic player. One of my favourite female footballers, alongside Melanie Leupolz, just for the work that they do in midfield. I just think they're two fantastic players. So I would have shown the children these and shown them what they were doing, how well they were being successful, and stuff like that. And you know, it's the thing is, it just takes time. It just takes time. I taken a bunch of girls who said, "No, girls don't play football. They're playing football." You know, as part of my PE lesson, as part of the sport in the school. And that's going back to the point you said earlier about, you know, not being successful in games in PE, especially with my warm-ups. What I try to do, if I have a tagging game or something, I adapt it in a way that nobody's ever out. So they're always playing the game. Yeah. And the one thing that Martin taught me was that PE's there for the kids, especially in primary school, to enjoy it. It has to be fun. So you don't have the same competitive element in there. Yes, you can have some tournaments and competitions. We did have that where there were winners, and like the swimming gala, they would have got medals. But like 99% of our PE sessions were about the children having fun, learning how to play the game, learning strategies and how to win the game, and learning how to make themselves improve, in one specific aspect during that session. Our kids, every single kid, maybe one or two exceptions, loved our PE sessions. They loved coming to PE. The kids at my PGCE school that I taught PE to absolutely loved coming to my PE sessions. And that's, you know, you've mentioned that before, that, you know, people have grown up and they haven't enjoyed being fit and stuff like that. It's all down to the PE teacher, and there's some PE teachers who potentially are still living in the past in terms of their approach and not adjusting that. But then again, I've only ever taught PE in Europe and outside of the UK, so I can't really comment too much on the UK aspect, other than I know that instead of bringing in an actual qualified PE teacher for primary schools, they're bringing in coaches. And what I've seen is that they're then using PE programs that are set up for them online. So these guys aren't actually then going setting up their program. They're not setting up the session themselves, really. And they're not really looking at it and then adapting it, because it's all sort of done for them. That's where the quality assurance comes in. That's where the enjoyment for the kids come in. And we see a lot of halls, at least I saw some halls double up as cafeterias. You know, so it all comes in with that. And, you know, we in the UK can learn a lot from the education system when it comes to teaching PE in Europe and beyond. And that approach, the primary school PE, has to be entirely on fun. And thing is, I've read a number of academic journals and articles on this. There has been research conducted to see if there's any correlation between an improvement in academic performance as a result of increased levels of physical activity. And the way that they've done it has meant that a lot of the results show that there's basically zero to a marginal effect on academic performance. But in my school at ISM, we had morning activities. So Martin and I rotated it. One of us would have taken a morning activity with the kids in the morning, get them running around, get their pulses going and stuff like that. We did see the correlation between those, when we started those morning activities and those children, especially in their first two lessons of the day. This is why we have maths and English first two lessons of the day normally, because they're most alert. They're going to learn more first thing in the morning, because then from lunchtime onwards, the kids get tired, their minds are gone. So we generally keep PE towards lunch or later. But if there's more research done into that and there's more evidence that's a lot stronger to support that, then perhaps we'll get that change that you and I are thinking about, that are wanting. But if there's no money for it, if there's no real reason for them to go and do the research, it's not going to get done, is it?
No, and we all know after the last few years, evidence doesn't change people's opinions, unfortunately.
I was wondering when you get something like that out. But yeah, it's one of those things. We just do the best that we can as, PE teachers, in the same way that, the likes of me, where I'm teaching both, try to do in the classroom as well. And again, it's all about the psychological influence that you have on the kids. It's about their social development. If your kid's not happy coming into class, they're not going to learn. It doesn't matter how good you are as a teacher. It doesn't matter how good you are at differentiating your tasks. They're not happy. They don't feel safe. They don't feel secure. They're going to do shit in your class.
Yeah.
And one way of helping with that is exercise. Tyson Fury went through that massive battle with depression, wanted to kill himself. What's the one thing that helped level off his mind? Exercise. I know myself from my own social anxieties and depressive periods and stuff in the past, like self-esteem, etc., etc. The one thing that kept things ticking over and that helped improve that was physical exercise and diet. And, we have so many, heart disease, diabetes, joint issues, dementia, all these sorts of things where they're starting to find, or at least they have found with certain heart disease, for example, where diet and exercise have a direct or an indirect link to these things coming about. So it still baffles me as to why there's not a big enough focus on that in the education system. I say that I'm fat now, but I've had some bad injuries and then I've had COVID, so it's not like it's been an easy ship in that sense. I won't be fat by the end of the year, I can tell you that much. But well, that's why we teach kids. We teach them not to make the same BS mistakes that we've made.
It's also a good way to get your steps up, isn't it, when you're working with kids? So we have gone longer than we should have done. I've got a lot of stuff to do, but I've just enjoyed talking to you for so much. I've been neglecting it. So I'm going to rush around and get everything ready and start making a move. But thank you very much for your time, for your insight. Thank you for coming on. It's been wonderful to talk and to catch up, and I wish you all the best.
Yeah, no problem, mate. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on, and good luck. Good luck with the next one.
Thank you. Brilliant being able to catch up with Dave. Hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Learned a lot from Dave's experiences all around the world. Check out the site, we've got a few new jobs on there, lots in women's football up and down the country, and a few abroad actually. And this Thursday the 3rd we have a webinar 7 o'clock with Gerard Jones of New Zealand, talking Gerard